Bolivia, South America. Here, 45 miles west of La Paz, isolated high in the Andes Mountains, lie the mysterious ancient ruins of Pumapunku. Spread across a desert plateau at an altitude over 12,000 feet, the megalithic stones found here are among the largest on the planet, measuring up to 26 feet long and weighing more than 100 tons each.
These are the mysterious ruins of Pumapunku, nearly 13,000 feet in the Altiplano of Bolivia. What you have here are massive blocks of granite scattered like some kids' toy blocks around the site. It's like some giant cataclysm just wiped out this entire area. Archaeologists are baffled by what Pumapunku was, how it looked, and what the purpose of this enormous structure would have been.
Mainstream scientists believe the site was originally constructed about 2,000 years ago. But in 1945, archaeologist Arthur Poznański proposed that Pumapunku was much, much older. By examining the structures and what he believed were their original alignment with the stars, he dated the ruins to 15,000 BC.
Arthur Poznański was a researcher, he was part Bolivian, and he had worked at the site for many decades. And he concluded that the site must have been built about 17,000 years ago by studying the archaeoastronomy of that particular site.
We don't know how old Pumapunku is. We have had some circumstantial dating, but we have been unable to date the stones of Pumapunku themselves. They could be thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of years old. We don't know.
I think the fascinating thing about Pumapunku is how did these structures get built? We're talking about stone that is 25 feet high, stone that is hundreds of tons.
Pumapunku is so unique in the way that it was constructed and shaped and positioned that it is the most intriguing ancient site on the planet. Of all the places I've ever visited, Pumapunku is the one that I go back to time and again because no one can solve the mystery.
Mainstream scholars believe the andesite blocks found at Pumapunku were formed by hand with primitive stone tools. But some researchers point to the intricate stonework as evidence of the use of advanced precision technology.
One of the amazing things here at Pumapunku is the precision of the blocks. You can see with this block of granite that it's really been cut at very accurate right angles. Not only do these granite blocks have precision corners, but they also have these difficult drill holes that are going right through the rock.
But how could such primitive people, living perhaps tens of thousands of years ago, have produced such flawless stonework? Might the ancient builders of Pumapunku have fabricated the megalithic stones with advanced technology? Technology of an otherworldly origin, as ancient astronaut theorists believe.
You know, Brian, this is one of the most interesting and unusual stones here at Pumapunku. It's got these perfect right angles. And each of these small drill holes are basically evenly spaced along this routed groove. To me, it's clear that power tools have been used on this unusual block of stone here.
Well, exactly, and this surface is as smooth as the tabletop, like in your kitchen. There's no wave to it or anything. This was machined. But who machined it? It's an astonishing piece of work, and how anyone could think that primitive human beings could have done this. You know, it's just crazy. If anything looks like ancient aliens, it's this stone.
Puma Punku is a large temple complex located on a high plateau in Bolivia. Mainstream archaeologists date the site from approximately 200 BC. The people who lived here had neither a written language nor the wheel, yet somehow they built one of the world's most complex structures. Ancient alien theorists view Puma Punku as clear proof of extraterrestrial influence.
The ruins we find at Puma Punku are simply extraordinary. Puma Punku defies logic.
The interest of Puma Punku is not so much that the individual stones slotted together perfectly, but the fact that the stones as such are of such tremendous design that it requires concepts of mathematics which are far beyond anything we are actually using right now. Yet somehow in the past, somebody has made that for a specific purpose, and in a way which even computer programs today would kind of go, how is this possible?
In the highlands of Bolivia, Puma Punku, some of these blocks are over 40 to 50 tons each. What can you tell us about this?
Boy, they had their stone cutting abilities, you know, pretty well fine-tuned for 5,000 years old. I mean, it's almost unbelievable. But these cutting planes that they have on here are very impressive. And some of the incise cuts, see, like in here, all these interior cuts, very hard to do. I mean, it would be difficult for us with our equipment to get that kind of precision.
Let's talk a little bit about inside boxes.
Ooh, I was afraid you were going to pull something like this on me. That is a hell of a piece of work. I mean, if we were to do something like that today, we use what they have, these computer-driven CNC machines, which have diamond tips, and you have a template that, you know, the computer follows, and even then, it may not come out as perfect.
Because even though you can tell that obviously this piece broke off, nowhere in here can you see any imperfection. It's like, and by the way, when you're there, if you go with your finger over these edges and you put a little pressure on your fingertip, you can cut yourself. This is how sharp the edges are.
But where could the ancient peoples have developed such technology? Is it really possible that extraterrestrial visitors provided different construction methods and tools?
When I saw these blocks, I didn't really think that they were cut. The first thing really that I thought of was this appears very similar to Frank Lloyd Wright's textile block system of construction, which he used in his California houses in the early 1920s. Now what he did was he took concrete, poured it into molds.
There actually are ancient Incan legends that suggest that they had the capability of softening the stone. At Sacsayhuaman, for example, we find these gigantic stone blocks, gigantic stone walls, where it looks as if those stones were molten, put into place, and then the stone hardened again.
Bolivia, South America. Here lie the ruins of Puma Punku, a mysterious temple complex located in the ancient city of Tiwanaku. It is believed to have been built about 2,000 years ago. The year he published his best-selling book, Chariots of the Gods, author Eric von Daniken made a pilgrimage to this archaeological site for more proof of his controversial theory that extraterrestrial beings had visited Earth in the distant past.
Puma Punku is in the highland of Bolivia. You stand there and you are absolutely shocked. There are gigantic platforms laying around. At that time, in 1968, there was no archaeological work done up there.
When Eric von Daniken arrived at Puma Punku, here he found evidence, clearly, of lost high technology. We see laser perfection drilled holes, stone that has been somehow liquefied or almost kind of made vitrified and stuck together. This is not possible without the use of high technology.
Eric was able to see these H blocks. They're big granite blocks, all articulated and cut, as if they were pre-manufactured, and in such a way that they would fit together and create these giant walls. It was such a high-tech kind of construction that it boggled everyone's mind.
So what we have in Puma Punku is the traditional, what I would say, Eric von Daniken tackling archaeology. There is, within the methodology of how these stones were constructed, a certain degree of difficulty which our ancestors simply never attained in the surrounding landscape of Tiwanaku. The stone carvers basically told him that it was almost impossible or extremely difficult to create these artifacts, and that specifically why they would be doing it is something which really defies explanation.
Another aspect of Puma Punku that captivated von Daniken was the legend of its creation, as put forward by the indigenous people of the region.
The population living there are called the Aymara, and the Aymara themselves say that they had no involvement in building Puma Punku. In fact, when you ask them who built Puma Punku, they will point to the sky and they will say, Los dioses, the gods.
In Puma Punku, they say, the gods constructed the place in one night. This makes sense. You have an extraterrestrial crew, they come down to Earth. So they construct with their tools just something which we would call today a basic camp. They behave themselves like ethnologists would do. They learn, they teach a little the humans, they learn their language. One day they disappear, their job is over. They take all their instruments back to the mother spaceship, and left are only a few ruins of the basic camp.
Puma Punku is a field of stone ruins that both thrills and stimulates the imaginations of ancient alien theorists.
In my opinion, the most significant piece of evidence that we have in this entire ancient astronaut puzzle is Puma Punku in the highland of Bolivia. While the pyramids at Giza are an incredible feat of achievement, compared to Puma Punku, the pyramids are child play. Logic does not exist at Puma Punku because there we have megalithic structures which just lie about this entire site as if ripped apart by some sort of a great force.
The blocks of Puma Punku were so finely cut that they once perfectly interlocked, like the pieces of an elaborate puzzle. But with the nearest quarry over 10 miles away, How did these colossal stones, some weighing hundreds of tons, even get here?
We are talking about the place 4,000 meters over sea level. That means there are no trees up there, which you could use for rollers. Nothing grows except a few grasses and bushes.
I have stood in front of many monuments. However, Puma Punku takes the crown because what we find there is so inexplicable, so inachievable, that the question remains, how was it done and for what purposes? Mainstream archaeologists say that Puma Punku was built by the Aymara Indians. And we would all have to agree that in order to build something like Puma Punku, you need writing, you need planning, and you need some sort of a idea where which piece goes and how it ultimately all fits together. But there is one thing that all the mainstream archaeologists agree upon, that the Aymara didn't have any writing. So how is it possible that they built all of this without plans?
What's really amazing, and why the ancient astronaut theorists are so drawn to Puma Punku and Tiwanaku, is that the quality of the stonework and the immense size of these blocks is so incredible and perfect that there's actually evidence of machining, and that they were using machine tools to cut these blocks.
One of these platforms is 800 tons, and they are so smoothly polished. You have some stone, megalithic stones, with grooves which are just a few millimeters inside, which definitely cannot be made with Stone Age chisels. It doesn't work with Stone Age chisels, so there is another technology behind it.
The lines cut into these rocks are exactly straight and precisely the same depth from one end to the other.
It's as if only master builders were allowed to work there, because everything is so precise, everything is so perfect. You wonder how any of this was even possible. One of the most intriguing things there is that the stones that were used there aren't sandstone, they're granite and diorite. The only stone that's harder than diorite is diamond. So the only way that this could have been achieved is if the tools were tipped with diamonds.
American professors who were up there with their computer and modern measurements, they were really shocked. In their literature, they say it is impossible to reconstruct Puma Punku. It's absolutely impossible.
But is it really difficult to believe that ancient peoples could have so precisely carved these stones, or could build such an incredibly intricate structure from them?
If it was ancient astronauts teaching them these building techniques, why don't we see just perfect, almost skyscraper-like vertical edifices? Everything was all pyramid-like. Stone cutting techniques have been invented and reinvented and independently invented all over the world. If you think of yourself as a god king and you want to have a structure built that's going to last thousands of years, it's much better to build it out of perfectly fitting stones without mortar that degrades and decays and has to be maintained. So we see mortarless structures, megalithic structures, all over the world.
You have an anomaly here where, on one hand, these people are supposed to be very primitive. They're just one step out of the Stone Age. Yet, what they're doing are things that we couldn't even do today, apparently, or would have extreme difficulty. And that is building with these giant blocks of stone, perfectly fitting them together with other blocks, interlocking them.
The ancient people of our time on this planet truly saw strange things. They witnessed bizarre events. But those stories, other than in depictions and some artwork and things like that, they're gone for some reason. They're just gone. But left behind are incredible things that we have that make you wonder, how in the heck were these things built? Those are great mysteries, and I think one of the things that keeps people just continuing to push for the answers are the fact that these things are so out there that they can't figure it out.
Stonehenge, England. Here, on the Salisbury Plain in the county of Wiltshire, stands the most sophisticated prehistoric stone circle in the world. According to radiocarbon dating, this striking arrangement of monoliths was placed on this wide plain in southern England more than 4,000 years ago. Consisting of more than 100 stone blocks, the monoliths create a larger structure known as a megalith.
There is a period in time, several thousand years ago, which is known as the megalithic time. And it is defined by the fact that our ancestors, pretty much in every part of civilization, began to build with gigantic stones.
These cultures, which were known as megalithic cultures, are something of a mystery to us. We have to ask ourselves why, all of a sudden virtually, human beings across a broad stretch of Europe and Asia suddenly started to prize large pieces of rock free, drag them around the landscape, and then piling them up in very exotic and unusual ways.
Stonehenge, the world's most famous megalithic structure, derives its name from the material used to construct it, and also from the term henge, which refers to a circular or oval-shaped bank that surrounds a central flat area.
Stonehenge, it's just 25% of the original monument. 75% has been destroyed forever. Originally, they had 60 huge blocks that formed a perfect circle. The question is, who was able to move them and what was the purpose?
Although the specific origin of the site has eluded researchers for centuries, the physical construction of Stonehenge is believed to have taken place in different stages over a period of several thousands of years.
It's now believed the very first part of Stonehenge is 3 great wooden post holes, which are now in the car park, and there's blobs of paint on them. These are dated to at least 10,000 years old. The next phase of construction of Stonehenge was around 3,200 to 3,400 BC, where they built the Great Earthen Henge, and there was just a couple of stones there. Then a few hundred years later, they brought in the blue stones, and these are the ones that were brought over 100 miles away from the Preseli Mountains in Wales. The major monoliths there, the Great Sarsen stones, they were brought from much closer, about 20 miles away, but some of them weigh up to 50 tons.
Multi-ton stones being carved from the landscape and transported distances of up to 100 miles. Is it really possible that a prehistoric people could accomplish such an enormous and seemingly impossible task?
The theories really range from they either used rollers and tree trunks, which is kind of unlikely when you look at some of the terrain they would have had to go through.
There have been teams of Brits who have tried to recapitulate these things. How did they get them across the rivers between Wales and Stonehenge? How did they go up and down through valleys and over hills?
One explanation associated with Stonehenge dates back to the Arthurian legend. And the legend says that the stones at Stonehenge were brought from Ireland by Merlin, who was King Arthur's magician.
Merlin was said to transport the stones by levitating them and pushing them along, just with his bare hands, all the way across the landscape from Wales to Stonehenge.
The great 20th century French philosopher and historian Jean Markel wrote over 40 books on the life of Merlin and Arthur and the Celtic traditions. And Markel was adamant that Merlin was a real person. He was also adamant that Merlin was an incredibly powerful, otherworldly being who was here to teach us to move beyond the human restrictions and boundaries.
Palmar Sur, Costa Rica. While clearing the jungles in the 1930s, crews discover hundreds of monolithic stone spheres.
Many of them are huge. I mean, they're 10 feet in diameter. They're gigantically huge. Others are much smaller, the size of a basketball or of a car tire or something like that.
To date, over 300 stone spheres have been found at archaeological sites across the region. And Las Bolas, as they are called, are some of the most precise stone carvings in the ancient world. Some experts believe these mysterious stone balls could be 96% completely spherical.
A perfectly spherical, round ball is hard to make. And in fact, where they're found is a primitive area. So the stone balls that we see at Costa Rica would have been very, very hard to make by just bashing them out with a rock.
We can only imagine how they may have been able to make such perfect spheres. These spheres are carved out of granites and granodiorites. These are very hard, igneous rocks, difficult to work.
Granodiorite is one of the hardest natural materials. It never comes free in nature in the shape of the sphere. So obviously, somebody shaped them. Today, we would need to use diamond tools and laser to shape the spheres.
It almost seems like there was some kind of megalithic carving school who could create the most perfect sphere. Some of them are still hidden within the jungles. So what were they doing there? I mean, why were they constructed?
Jungle-dwelling local chiefs were sometimes buried with some of the smaller balls. But some of the balls are gigantically huge. I mean, in fact, they're so large, they couldn't fit in any grave. So the great mystery with the stone balls really is what their purpose was.
According to the legends of Costa Rica, those stone spheres were used as cannonballs by the god of thunder to drive away the god of wind and hurricanes. Now, these are all wonderful ideas of a story, but as we all know, every story has a core of truth, and the question is, what is that core?
Are the legends of gods battling storms really a description of ancient astronaut machinery at work, as some researchers suggest? And if so, might the discovery of stone spheres reveal the ultimate purpose for monoliths? Bosnia-Herzegovina, 2004. A team of archaeologists discovers stone spheres in forests and creek beds near the town of Banja Luka.
If you go into that area, it's a ravine in a mountainside that's been cut by a stream, and in it are all of these stone balls. Very similar to the ones in Costa Rica. They're half buried in this mountainside, and some are exposed. It is a tourist area, and in fact, Bosnia has 4 or 5 areas where these stone balls can be seen.
The tree was standing there. So with the last storm, the tree fell, and all this, dirt, all this material covered the stone sphere, which is here, right here. The biggest source of Bosnian stone spheres is the central Bosnian town of Zavidovići. We took samples from 4 different stone spheres and samples of natural stone that we found nearby. And then we did chemical analysis But the conclusion was those stone spheres were made from the liquid state. They would melt them. They were adding certain additives to get the better properties of material. And then when they got dry in certain molds, they were getting a perfect shape of the sphere.
Like most other monoliths, researchers believe the spheres were likely used for ceremonial rituals. But is it possible that these monoliths, like the stone spheres in Costa Rica, helped create a connection to celestial beings, as ancient astronaut theorists contend?
Another theory of the stone balls is that they were somehow used as star maps, and that they were rolled around and they would show where stars were and their relationship to other areas. Very much like some extraterrestrial map.
It's also said that these stone balls were there to concentrate thought, that they were somehow physical devices, that somehow by touching or working with these stones, we were able to establish a bridge to another dimension.
Homestead, Florida, 30 miles south of Miami. This former agricultural town is home to one of the most mysterious structures in North America. A stone garden made of sculpted blocks of ancient coral, some weighing 30 tons. It's called the Coral Castle. Spread over several acres, the complex formations and intricate designs of the stone walls and sculptures marvel tourists. But unlike other great structures around the world, this site is not ancient.
Coral Castle in Florida is often said to be the only modern megalithic structure ever built.
In 1923, Ed Leedskalnin, a Latvian immigrant, began building what he originally called Rockgate Park. But believe it or not, Leedskalnin insisted that he was not using modern machinery to build the impressive structure. He also claimed that he was working alone.
Well, Ed was a hermit, and Ed was a loner, and he was a foreigner, and he was a recluse and a scientist.
He was in love with a woman, and he wanted to build this facility in memory of her, and he waited for her to come from Europe. And he waited, and he waited, and she never did. But the big question is how did this frail little man move these thousands of pounds of block by himself?
Barely over 5 feet tall and weighing just 100 pounds, Leedskalnin is said to have carved, moved, and hoisted huge multi-ton stones using only a makeshift tripod.
He has a tripod, 3 pieces of Florida pine, and he's got some chains, and he's now going to lift 30 tons, 10 tons of rock. Can't be done. No one could do that.
He would work at night. He wouldn't let anybody watch him. And he said that he knew the secrets of the pyramids.
But what exactly was Leedskalnin referring to? Had he rediscovered the same advanced technology used to build megalithic structures like Karnak and Sacsayhuaman?
Ed, over and over again, would tell people that he knew the secrets that helped the Egyptians build the pyramids. What was he talking about? Why was he constantly harking back to the Egyptians? We don't know.
Leedskalnin continued work on the Coral Castle until his death in 1951. In the journals he left behind, the builder explained that he had discovered the ancient secret of transforming stones into weightless objects.
Ed says this in his pamphlet, Magnetic Current, that real gravity is actually real magnets. So if you reverse the magnet force with a force of some kind of electromagnetic, radio perhaps, frequency, you can then make these rocks not as heavy as they seem otherwise, and therefore you can lift them.
But if Fleet Skolnin had developed a device that could modify gravity, what was his secret? Some suggest the answer lies in a mysterious black box that can be seen in various photographs. A box that has since disappeared.
The black box sitting on top is the element that no one has ever seen except in those pictures, and no one has today. We believe that black box has something to do with how he got these massive, heavy, brittle pieces of rock up in the air in a way that no one can duplicate.
He had some kind of magnetic machine down in one of his other house areas that has since been dismantled, but it had a revolving ability. He may have been having that thing spin. The whole place could have been anti-gravity. Probably just pushed these into place.
The island of Malta, 2022. While investigating local legends that a race of giant extraterrestrial beings once inhabited this area more than 5,000 years ago.
We're here. We're here again. We made it. Again, yes.
Giorgio Tsoukalos meets with his longtime friend, Eric von Daniken, author of the 1968 international bestseller, Chariots of the Gods, which established the foundation for the ancient astronaut theory. They have arranged to visit one of the most mysterious sites on the islands, called Hajarim, which archaeologists believe might be Malta's second oldest megalithic structure, built shortly after Gigantia.
Hajar-Kim is a Maltese temple complex that has multiple temples on it as well. The oldest one, in the northern temple, dates to the mid-4th millennium BC.
You see colossal, huge stones, huge walls and doorways, and it's clear that it's very, very old. It's something that it would be almost indestructible. And in fact, it's been there for thousands of years.
Located near Malta's southern shores, the temples of Hajarim are believed by mainstream archaeologists to have been constructed by the same primitive culture who created the temples of Gigantia on the neighboring island of Gozo.
Good morning, gentlemen.
How are you? Pleasure.
Thank you.
Eric von Daniken.
Joining Giorgio once again is local historian Franz von Avendonk.
Incredible. Look at this. So, what are we talking about here? How tall is it?
About 6 meters.
Wow. So that's about 17, 18 feet, yeah?
Something like that. Maybe it was even bigger because of erosion. It could have been a bit higher, and it surely had a roof.
I mean, just incredible.
Now, whether it was a stone roof or a wooden roof, there is still discussion about it. But it was covered, and the whole wall must have reached at least this height.
And the whole temple is orientated astronomically.
Yeah, so at the sunrise on the winter solstice, and you would be here at the back, you would see the sun coming up over the horizon through the entrance. And if you are patient and you stay here till the evening, you'll see over there another temple, which will have a light phenomena during the sunset of the same day.
It's all oriented as so. It had to do something with the stars, with the universe, definitely.
This must have been a very important building for them, and that's why they put so much effort in creating the building.
Mainstream historians continue to debate what purpose the temples at Hajarim might have served. But a recent discovery has led some to suggest that the site has an otherworldly connection.
And this is known as the Oracle Room. And the room has something special. Look at the oval inside. There is a very strong magnetic field inside that oval. It's believed that women went in there and they would have certain experiences, hear sounds, see flashes. It was contact with the gods.
The so-called Oracle Chamber is believed to have been used thousands of years ago as a place where worshippers communicated with their goddesses. And it is here that a statue was discovered which is believed to represent one of those deities.
In this room, behind the partition, they found a number of statues. Among them, the famous Venus of Malta, which is a statue of the goddess.